Hello everyone, welcome back to this Python tutorial. This tutorial is brought to you by Ignite. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel, like this video and turn on the notification bell. So we are done installing Python and installing VS Code. So the next thing to do now is to actually start coding. So to start, we need to open a folder. So to do that, it's very easy. So I've already created a folder for this class. Everything we are going to do in this class is going to be saved in this folder, this class folder. So what I need to do is to actually open that folder in my VS Code. So I just click on Files, you see Open Folder. I'm going to click on Open Folder. Then this folder is located in my desktop, so I'm going to select it, the class folder. So the folder is open. Right now the folder is empty. There's nothing in the folder. So the next step now is to create a Python file. So we can start writing Python codes. So now to create a file in VS Code is very easy. Just click on the file icon. So we just need to click there. And then the next thing we need to get a name for our file. So let me say I'm naming it men. Let's just go with men for now. So now in programming, every file must have something. Actually, in computer in general, not just in programming, every file has something, which is called a file extension. This file extension is what actually tells the computer what type of file a file is. You see things like your images, they are also files. So for your computer to be able to know that this is actually an image, it is from the file extension, which is usually .png or .jpeg etc, anyone, but every file should have an extension, and the extension is what tells the computer what type of output to actually give, what the file is at, the content of that particular file. So for Python, the file extension for Python is .py. That is the file extension for Python, .py. So if you notice, you will see the icon here, VS Code just change the icon to the Python icon, because it already knows that whenever it sees a .py, that file is definitely a Python. So meaning that whenever we run this file, it's going to interact with the Python interpreter which we just downloaded. So before we start doing anything, I would like to talk a little bit on what Python actually is. So Python is a high-level programming language. It is one of the fastest growing language that we have, like 2024. So one of the most known characteristics of Python is its readability and simplicity. Python is has been taken as a first course by many institutions to introduce the students into programming, because it is very easy to learn, it is very beginners friendly, and it is readable and simple, as I said earlier. So without further delay, no need to talk too much. Let's get down to actually coding stuff, actually learning Python. So now the first thing we're going to be talking about is variables. We're going to see what variables are in Python. Well, not just in Python actually, because variable is a concept that is in programming in general. So we are going to talk about what variables are in programming, like programming generally. So variables are like containers for storing data. So that is, I think that is the most used definition that I can think about. Variables are containers for storing data. So, but when we come to a more practical sense of variables, variables are like us bringing an entity and giving it a name. I don't know if if you're kind of getting what I'm saying, but variables are just like, okay, me bringing something, I kind of saying I want to give this thing a name. So whenever I refer to that name, I'm referring to that thing that I gave that name to. So are you kind of grabbing the context of what variables is? But when we get to computer actually, so let's see what variables actually do. So Note that every program you actually run is actually running from your RAM. Hope you know, which is the working memory of your computer. So now what variables actually are, they are just like I was saying, I have a data that I want to use by program. Like in that program, I have a data. Maybe let's say this is a game and we want to be able to keep track of your score. So we have a data for score. So now I want to create a space in my RAM, like a location, a space in my RAM. So now that space I created, I'm going to put the score of the player in that space. Then I'm going to give a name to that location. So whenever I refer to that name, I'm referring to the data saved in that location. Am I kind of making sense? So let's get to the practical aspects of this. I think you will get it more when we actually get to the practical um, aspect of creating it. So to create a variable in Python is very easy. One of the most easiest language for creating variables. I don't even know what I said here. But so let's just kick off. So to create a variable is very easy as I said. So we go, the first thing we need is a variable name. So a variable, let's say I want to create a variable to save scores as I said earlier. So the variable name will be score. So now the next thing we need is to actually assign a value to this variable, because I told you it's like a container for saving data. So we need to actually get the data we wish to save. So to do that, we need to get the equals to. This is called an assignment operator in programming in general. The equals to, just a single equals to is called an assignment operator. So now we want to assign a value to this. So let's say for now the score is 7. So I've just successfully created a variable. The variable is score and the value of the variable is 7. So whenever I refer to score, I'm directly referring to 7. You're kind of getting it. So I just, as I told you, like when we come to just a layman understand, variables is like us giving name to an entity. The entity here is 7 and the name we gave to it is 7. So let's try calling score and see what is going to answer. So I'm going to use print. Print is like a reserve word. Later we'll talk more on what reserve words are, but for now just know print is a reserve word. So now it's a function. Now I want to call score. So now let me save this and click on this icon here in order to run. So notice what just came out, 7. I'm calling score and what I get here is 7 because 7 is the value of score. The meaning of score to an interpreter at this moment is 7. Note, maybe okay, let me take this from here and kind of put it up here. So let me say that I can see Visual Studio is already marking out an error for us. This is one of the reasons why we use text editor. You see it kind of trying to help us autocomplete or and auto debugging and etc, things like that. Notice I have an error. Let's say the name score is not defined because our computer or our interpreter has no knowledge of score. Where the knowledge of score set is when I defined it. I don't know if I'm making sense. So variables are just us taking name and attaching a value to it. So we can use variables to store different types of data. So this brings us to another topic or subtopic in Python called data types. So there are different type of data when we are talking about computer, there are different type of data. Computer is an electronic device for data, like it is run by data. Everything about our computer is data. So there are different type of data. So we are going to be talking about the different type of data that we have in programming. The first one I'm going to talk about is the integer. Just like this number we just used here, It's an integer, just numbers. That is what integer is in programming generally. Integers is just number. As I just have 7 here, I have 75, any number, it's an integer. So let me change this now. I'm going to say integer. Oh, is that integer? Let's just go with that. So the next one I'm going to talk about is float. Mm, mm, Let me just call it float number, because float is also a number, but float is any number with a decimal point. Any number with a decimal point is float. Right now, let's just clean this line. Any number with a decimal point is actually a float. So the next one I'm going to talk about is string. So string is actually a sequence data type. When I mean sequence, I mean it has to do with a collection. So a string is just any character that is enclosed with this quote. It could be a single quote or a double quote. A string is just any character enclosed with this quote. So this character goes from alphabet to numbers to symbols. Just as far as it's enclosed this um in this quote, whether it's a single quote or a double quote, it is a string. So that is what string actually is. And as I said, string is a sequence data type, like because it's a collection. All these characters exist individually, like they exist individually. And I told you that everything runs from your RAM. This page here has a location it is saved in. This jar here has a location it is saved in your RAM. So every character here has exists individually. So that's why it says like a collection of character. It is a sequence data type. So for now, these are the only three I'm going to be talking about. Okay, there's another one I'm going to talk about, which is the boolean. The boolean is just one and zero, true or false. That's what boolean is. Very easy. Just one and zero, or true or false. So usually we go true or false. Notice the capital letter. The first letter is capital or false. You're seeing, so that is boolean. Boolean only has two values, true or false. So I've talked about four different data types. The first one is the integer, which is just numbers, any number. Then we have the floats, or the floating number, or the floating point number, and numbers with decimal point. And we have the string. String is any character that is enclosed in quotes. Then we have the boolean, which is only true or false. So that is the four like basic data type we have in Python. So now in order to know the data type particular of a particular variable, we use the type keyword, or the type reserved word, however you call it. So I'm going to go with a print. Then I'm going to say type. So I want to print the type of this integer variable. So let's see what we will have. You can see we have, it is of int, which is how our computer or how Python refers to integer. So the next one, let's see the data type of the floating point number. So it is of type float. Then let's go for string. This is how we can see or know the data type of a particular data or of a particular variable. We can go for, want to go for type, and we want to check for the string. So we can see str, which is short for string. So we already know for the boolean, which is of type bool. So we have successfully learned how to create variables and the different data types that we can actually assign to variables. So right now we are not using variables to save any important data, but in our next class we are going to be using variables to save very important data, and we are going to explore more what variables actually is. So before I cut this video, I would like to give you like some rules when it comes to naming variables. To name variables in Python, you don't just name them. There are some rules that we have to follow when we actually want to name variables. So the first rule is that our variables cannot start with a number. You cannot start your variable with a number. That is very wrong. You can have a number in the variable, yes, in the variable name, but you cannot start with a number. You cannot also start with a symbol, any symbol. You cannot start with any symbol, and it cannot also contain any symbol apart from an underscore. An underscore is the only symbol that is allowed in your variable name. Any other symbol is wrong. It will not work. It will give you an error. The only symbol that I can use when naming variable is an underscore. And when naming variables, always try to give variable names that are associated to like the use, what type of data you'll be saving in that variable, so that you can be able, because the main reason why we give variable names is so that we can actually save the data and be able to use it, later in our code. So that is the main reason why we actually save variables, why we actually make variables. So you want to give names that are associated to what that variable is going to be used for, so that it will be easy for you to remember. You can just come and be like, hey, yeah, I'll be like R. Now actually it's going to work if I should call R. It's not going to give me an error, but on a long run I'll notice that this R is kind of, it makes things difficult for me, because maybe later in future I will not know what this R is. I don't know if I'm kind of making sense, but when naming variables, give your variables name that's associated to the purpose of that variable. So these are the rules for naming variables, for giving variables name. The number one rule is that you cannot start with a number. It can consist of a number, but it cannot start with a number. The second one is that you cannot use any symbol in your variables apart from an underscore. An underscore is the only symbol that is allowed in your variable name. The third one is that you do not also, sorry, I did not include this. You do not also give spaces. Like I cannot come here and add a space in between these two variables. It is wrong. You cannot give space in your variables names. You cannot leave a space. Instead of leaving a space, rather use an underscore. You cannot give space in your variable name. When naming variables, you cannot leave space. Um So that is kind of all the rules I think when it comes to naming variables. And another thing you need to note, variables are case sensitive. If I should actually, like, let me clean this underscore, I change this F to a capital letter F, is no more same thing as this with a small letter f. Variables are case sensitive. We end this class. Let's kind of see like a practical use case of variables. Let's actually use variable for something that is useful. So let's say we have a program, and that program we want to get like a name from our users, and save that name with a variable. Then we want to kind of say hi to our users. So to do that is very simple. So let's create a variable. So this variable is going to be name, because we are going to be using it to save the name of our user. So right now we are not getting any information from our users. Let's say we already have the name. So let's say the name of our user is John. So right now what we want to do is we want to be able to like say hi John. So now we're going to print something. So now print, and the next thing now is to go for this column, this quote. Then we want to say hi. So we want to use the plus sign, and for the name. See me, this is called strange incantation. We're not going to talk about that too much now. We're going to talk about it more when we take strange as a topic, because strange is actually very big. We're not going to discuss about it in this video, but in our next video we'll talk about everything you need to know about strange. But what I just did now is called strange incantation. I took one strange and I added it to another string. So let's see what output we're going to have. So when I run this, we see hi John. So another thing you need to know, every character is a string, even a space. Notice there's no space in between this. So the way I can do that is to add a space. Even this space is also going to be counted as a string. So let me run this now. So is I have hi John. So another use case of strings, let's say we have num1. So num1 will be equals to 4. Then we have num2. Let's say num2 be equals to 6. So now I can, look, sorry, this is num1. So let's go num2. So now I can print something. So let me print an expression and say I want num1 to be plus num2. Can also have another expression here, or maybe let's rather do it this way. Let's say expression 1 using e as a short form. So e1 will be equals to num1 will be equals to, sorry, plus num2. Then I will have e2, which is expression 2, where we now have num2 minus num1. Then we can have expression 3, where we are kind of saying num2 num1 divided by num2. So I have three expressions. So now let me print things on the screen. So I'll print the first one and be like, so let's go. We want to do something. So now I'm going to say num1, sorry, num1 going to have eh? Then I'm going to say plus, let's kind of put a plus here. put a plus here. As num2 is equal to, let's don't forget to add space here. So E1. So so we're going to do that for E2 and E3. We are going to actually arrive that we are going to get to an error, but let's just continue. There is an error I'm already seeing, but I want us to actually get that so you can see the error. So the second expression is num2 minus num1 will be equals to E2, and the third one is num1 divided by num2 will be equals to E3. When I run this, I should get an error. Now, unsupported blah 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 blah, blah. So but what this error is all about is I'm trying to add data of different data type. You see me trying to add an integer with a string, trying to concatenate it, which is not possible. I cannot concatenate an integer to a string. Am I making sense? We cannot concatenate two data type of different two data of different data types, rather, sorry for that. We cannot concatenate or add two data of different data types. So the way to do this is whenever we want to perform operations like this, we have to convert one of the data that we wish to concatenate to the other one's data type. So all of them will be of same data type. So right now we can see that num1 is an integer. So I'm going to convert it to a string. So to do that is very easy. We are going to use the string keyword as the str keyword. This is how we convert data types. So we are going to use the string. I'm converting num1, which is an integer, to a string. I'm going to repeat the process for num2. Or rather, so we can make this more easier. If you follow this process, this kind of tedious. I'll have to repeat this for everywhere where I mentioned num1 and num2. It's kind of really tedious, really not important. So now I've been actually able to do this, but I have to repeat this for this line and this line, which is too much work. So if this was the way I code, I'm sure I won't be able to get anything done. So we are going to use an easier way to do this. So I'm just going to come down here and I'm going to do something. I'm going to say num1 is equal to str by num1. So I'm going to repeat this for num2. So let's go. So num2 now, for num2, so now for E1, for E2, so now for E3, now let's save this and let's run it now. So we notice there are no errors now. Everything went well. So it's really taking a variable I already defined and assigning another value to it. Now this value I'm assigning, I'm still making use of the variable here. So now the meaning of, remember, our program, our interpreter reads our code from top to bottom, from left to right. So up to this point, the meaning of num1 is 4. That is what num1 means to our interpreter. 4. 4 as an integer. So when we go to line 8, I kind of called num1 again and I use the assignment operator to give a new value. Now the value I gave to it, I'm taking the former value of num1, which is 4, and I'm converting it to a string. So are we kind of, you're kind of getting what is actually happening here. So we've talked about how we can convert strings. So now let's see how we can also convert to integers. So I have John here. So right now, let me change this to a string. So let's say I want to convert num1. You know what? Let's just create another variable for it. So let's kind of go down here and let's create a variable. Let's name this variable like, let's just name it num3. And I think I have a better way I'm going to explain this. So let's come here and let's change this to, note that I told you that we cannot perform an addition or any mathematical operation between two data with different data types. So that means all of these things are written here is wrong if I should go with this. So now in order to make it right, I need to convert this back to an integer. I don't know if I should run this now. No, we should have an error. This is an error because of we cannot add an integer to a string. So I need to convert num2 back to an integer. So the way to do this, I'm going to call num2 and I'm going to assign it. I'm going to use the int keyword. Int, this is how we convert data to integers. So int, and I'm converting num2. So when I save this and run it, everything is back to normal. Now notice if I'm converting and I actually added letters here, you see I'm going to get an error because I cannot convert this to an integer. These characters here, they cannot be converted to an integer. I can only convert strings that are made up of numbers. I can only convert strings that are made up of numbers to an integer or a float. Note that. So let's save this and run it again. So everything is back to normal. So let's talk about how we can convert to a float. Note now, E3 is actually an a float because you can see the decimal point. So let's say I want to convert it to an integer. I want to convert it to an integer, so I'm going to go to E3 right here. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say int. I'm going to put a bracket. I'm going to put a bracket here. I want to convert it to an integer, so I'm not going to have 0.00666. I'm going to have 0. That is the integer version of this number we see here. So let's run this now. I see 0 because this is the integer, no more decimal point. But let's say I want to convert a number to a float. So let's say I want to convert E1 to a float. So I'll just use the float keyword. Let's say, and let's run. So notice now I have 10.0 because that is a float now. It has been converted to a float. So this is we've talked about how to create variables, the rules for creating variables. We talk about data types and the different data types we have, how we can convert from a particular data type to another data type very easy. So I think that is all we're going to talk about in this class. Join me in the next class where we will talk about each data type and explain everything we need to know related to that data type. So thanks for joining the class. See you next time. Please like and subscribe.